Hello cruel world, my name is Dr. 𝐂𝐻𝐿. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. You can call me the ominous 𝐂𝐻𝐿. So I'm making this video because Johnny Depp took the stand very recently on the 19th of April during his $100 million defamation trial, which was against his ex-wife Amber Heard. And this all came to light in 2018 when Amber wrote an opinion piece for the Washington Post when she called herself a domestic violence survivor. So during the recent testimony, Depp told of his abusive upbringing at the hands of his mother. So, what kind of abuse had he experienced? How is this relevant to the case, if at all? Does the abuse that he suffered, is it relevant to the alleged domestic violence that he caused towards Amber Heard? And does his demeanour during the trial indicate that he was a perpetrator or indicate that he was a victim? I'm going to answer all of those questions in this video. It is I, Dr. 𝐂𝐻𝐿, host of the YouTube channel A Psych for Sore Minds. If you like your true crime with a little twist of psychiatry, you should go and check out my channel. So in his testimony, Johnny Depp further alleged that it was actually his ex, Amber Heard, that was the perpetrator of the violent bouts that blithed their relationship. And further, he claimed even more victimhood, saying that he got kicked off the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise because of the false allegations made against him. Now, going back to his childhood, Johnny Depp went into a lot of detail about, and I quote, verbal abuse, name-calling and bullying by his mother, Betty Sue Palmer. And he described her as very unpredictable. I should say that Palmer actually died in 2016. And he said that she took an opportunity to be as cruel as anybody could be. Later on in the trial, Depp laughed nervously as he recalled an ashtray being flung at him that hit him in the head and being beaten with high heel shoes, telephone and I quote, whatever's handy. Physical violence, physical abuse, that was a constant, he said. We were all somewhat shell-shocked. She'd walk past, you'd shield yourself because you didn't know what would happen, he said it again. Then he also said there's quite a lot of verbal abuse, name-calling, bullying, making fun of whatever defect one might have. My brother wore glasses, so he was four eyes. His teeth were messed up in the front, so he was bucktooth. And then Johnny Depp went on to explain that he himself had some sort of eye defect. And he said, and I quote, she would call me cockeye, one eye, anything she could to demean, humiliate. And then Depp described his father as a very kind man who was non-confrontational. And he said that his father never lashed out even though he was provoked. And he said, and I quote, he was a good man, he is a good man. But then he also mentioned that his father left abruptly when Depp was about 15, and he went on to speak about his mother's severe depression and suicide attempts, and he later said that he thought it was cowardly for his father to have left in the way that he did. And then, later on during the hearing, Johnny Depp started talking about Amber Heard, who he married in 2015. And he said, about 6 years ago, Ms. Heard made allegations that were, and I quote, not based in any species of truth. He said that though the relationship, there were arguments and things of that nature, but never did I reach the point of striking Ms. Heard in any way, nor have I ever struck a woman in my life. And then throughout the rest of the court hearing, they heard from various people, friends of the couple, a sound technician who worked with Johnny Depp for many years. And I think it's fair to say that the evidence was very mixed. So some people suggested that Amber Heard was very cold, very callous and provocative, so intentionally would provoke Johnny Depp. So for example, the sound technician, Mr. Wyatt, said that she often provoked him and that he had never seen Johnny be violent towards anybody. However, other expert testimony, or other witness testimony I should say, suggested that Johnny Depp was a heavy alcohol and drug user who abused Amber Heard physically on a regular basis. Okay, so that's the background context to what was said. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the interesting psychological aspects. So does Johnny Depp's victimhood matter? Well, I kind of understood that he had to talk about his childhood and the abuse he allegedly suffered. I should say allegedly because, you know, his mother's not around to defend herself. He had to answer those questions because he was asked those questions. But on the flip side, he was asked by his own lawyers. So if you're cynical, like me, you might say that it was all a tactic to get sympathy for the court during the case and also sympathy from the public. But here's the thing, I think it's irrelevant to a degree because Johnny Depp is either guilty or he's innocent. One of them must be lying. He says that he's never committed any abuse. Amber says that he abused her regularly. They can't both be true. So if he's innocent, then none of this is relevant. It's a sad story and I'm sure he's been through a lot and my heart goes out to him, but it's not relevant to the case. And if he's guilty, then if he had experienced physical and emotional abuse as a child from his mother, it might help explain some of his actions, because as we all know, abuse tends to run in cycles, but it doesn't excuse his behaviour. And I'd go even further than that. So I assess mentally disordered offenders. That's what I do. I look at their psychiatric states. I give expert evidence in court. And the vast majority were victims in one way or another. And I'm talking about people that have committed horrific crimes, who've committed sex offences against women, against children, people that have assaulted random strangers, people that have killed family members. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is almost all of them were a victim in some form, whether it's poverty, abuse, drug and alcohol use, but they're very rarely given any sort of sympathy. And I'm sure if you heard the stories of what many of my patients did, you would have very little celebrity. So it seems to be like a double standard that Johnny Depp gets this kind of sympathy. So think about it. If you didn't know Johnny Depp, if he wasn't this famous actor and he was just a man who'd been alleged of committing domestic violence against his ex-wife, would you care so much about his background? Would you have that level of intrigue and sympathy? I don't think most people would do, but I could be wrong. Let me know what you think as Psych for Sore guys and girls in the comments section below. Okay, I'm going to move on to another aspect that I think is really interesting. So the footage of Johnny Depp giving evidence in court is on YouTube, and a big proportion, a surprisingly shocking proportion of the comments below talk about his guilt or lack thereof. So they are saying that they quite strongly believe he is innocent. Now, I don't think just because you like somebody doesn't mean that they're innocent. Now, before I expand on that, I want to quickly introduce you to my channel, A Psych for Sore Minds. So I do a psychoanalysis of big celebrity cases like this. I've done a video on Jimmy Savile and psychoanalyzed him, talking about his particular character traits that allowed him to hide in plain sight. I've talked about how the people around him enabled him and hid and covered up his abuse. I did analysis of Boris Johnson and his tendency to lie, but I also do true crime cases because I work and help rehabilitate mentally disordered offenders. So if you're interested, I've done a whole series on Broadmoor, specifically on high profile ex-patients of Broadmoor like Ronnie Kray, Charles Bronson and David Copeland, the nail bomber. So if you want to know more about their backgrounds and their psychiatric illnesses, go chiggity, check out my channel. Okay, back to the episode. What I was saying before is that just because you like somebody, just because you enjoy their movies, that doesn't mean that they're innocent. It's completely irrelevant. And further, I don't think people appreciate that we're very bad at assessing somebody's guilt or innocence just through their personality or their mental state or their countenance or their presentation. So if you don't believe me, think of it like this. Bill Cosby, as we know, was one of the most prolific abusers of his position and sexual offenders in entertainment in history. But until the evidence came out against him, people were standing up to protect him. He had this very squeaky clean image. You know, people in a million years would never have assumed that he would have been capable of doing what he did. Conversely, there's the case of Amanda Knox. I'm sure many of you have heard about this. So she is a young woman who spent almost 4 years in an Italian prison following her wrongful conviction of the 2007 murder of her flatmate, who was named Meredith Kercher. So what transpired is, in the end, a burglar named Rudy Guedi was arrested a short time later following the discovery of the bloodstained fingerprints on Kercher's possessions. So why am I bringing up this case? Because there was an oddness to Amanda Knox's presentation while she was arrested, during the trial, when she was in the police station. She seemed somewhat flippant and jovial and smiling, and people were convinced, the public were convinced that she was guilty because of this. But she wasn't. And my point is that you cannot, I cannot, we cannot assume somebody's innocence or guilt just because of the way they present or their personality or whether you like them. So another point that I'd like to go on to that's kind of connected but not quite the same is Johnny Depp's demeanour during the court case. So again, I'm kind of feeding off a lot of YouTube comments on the footage, but people are saying that they believe he's telling the truth about his victimhood, about being abused, about being a victim to Amber Heard, and that he cannot be the perpetrator because, he looks guilty, because, he looks distressed, he speaks in a low voice with halting speech, with measured words. And my reaction to this would be, first of all, he's a professional actor. And also, similar to what I was saying before, people who are perpetrators don't necessarily come across a certain way, especially in court. So as I keep mentioning, I assess perpetrators. I sit in criminal courts, I sit in trials, and even people who have committed the most heinous kind of violence can present quite well in court, just like they can present quite well when I'm doing an assessment of them in prison. They're on their best behaviour because there's a reason to be, because they want to form a good impression so that when I write a court report, I write a favourable report about them. It makes sense. So what I'm saying is, just because Johnny Depp came across well in court, that is no comment on his innocence or guilt. So before I finish, I just want to be absolutely crystal clear. I'm not saying that Johnny Depp is guilty. I'm also not saying he's innocent. I'm saying that I don't know. With the information that we have, I don't know. But at least I know that I don't know. A wise philosopher once said, true knowledge is in knowing that we know nothing. And his name was Socrates, and if you want to check him up, it's under Socrates. So to conclude, Johnny Depp's testimony that he gave in the civil court case on the 19th of April was interesting, definitely, and it maybe gave us a bit of an insight into his background, into his life, but I would argue that it's also not necessarily relevant. I mean, it's relevant in putting everything into context, but it's not relevant in deciding whether he's innocent or guilty. The only thing that's relevant is the facts. And I hope and I expect that more facts will come out. But it's not certain, because I suppose it all depends on whether there was things like CCTV footage, witnesses, and how credible those witnesses are. Unless we get the correct information, it's literally one person's word against the other. And I guess the point I'm trying to make in this video is you shouldn't believe one of those people because of the way they present in court, or because you like their films, or because they come across a certain way. Your opinion on whether you like somebody is not the same as understanding whether things are factual or not. And that is my closing thought for this episode. Before I finish, I just want to shout out my boy Sean Atwood and thank him for once again doing all these collaborations with me. If you're one of my viewers, you should definitely go and check out his channel. He is the true king of true crime. That's all I have to say. Go check out the videos on my channel. Stay euthymic, and whatever happens, please do not forget, I love you.